I figured out as well how we can have the 3 screens. We can see all of us recording at once. So it will look brilliant now. It'll look much
Yay!
But look, thank you, Helen, for coming along and agreeing to be part of one of our TekCurious Founder series. I know Chad was quite keen to put you on a top of our hit list for people to come along and talk for what you're doing at DataCube and to say a bit more about your story and the journey you've been on. So I suppose those who haven't listened or watched one of our podcasts or vlogs from the TekCurious Founder series, I guess it's about us trying to sort of promote what's happening here in Bristol and the surrounding areas, because we think Bristol is an amazing city, that loads of really cool stuff happens. The tech ecosystem is just growing month over month, and it's a brilliant place to be. So I think the more that we can shout about that and talk about the stories and the journeys that people are going on, and I think as well, sort of not just all the rosy part, if you'd like, sort of some of the parts of the challenges, because I think there's lots of people that are sat there wanting to do it, but are just unsure or about starting on the journey of doing it, and probably it would be good for them to hear some of the lessons that people like yourself have learned. So if I hand over to Chad then, and we can just delve straight on in, if that's okay.
Great,
excellent.
Sounds good.
Thanks again, Helen. Thanks for coming on. It's a real pleasure to have you with us today. I think maybe we'll just open it up with you just giving us a bit of an overview of what the business is and you know, what is it all about, DataCube?
Yeah, absolutely. So I set up DataCube 3.5 years ago now. We are a data agency, so we help businesses really to get all their data into one place. Is often a big problem that we talk to with businesses. They've got disparate, disconnected data. So getting that all into one place for them so they can make sense of it, have some cool dashboards that will enable them ultimately to make smarter, quicker business decisions, and ultimately to make and save more money. That's really where we come in. You know, we work on projects with businesses so that they can get more efficient or spot more opportunities or learn from exactly what's going well or not well in the organization, so they can make and save more money. And particularly in the current climate, who doesn't need to make or save more money right now?
Absolutely. So tell us where it all came from in your mind. So where were you working? Where did it formulate? Was it a eureka moment, or give us a little bit of a run up to how it actually started and in sort of formulating in your mind?
Yeah, sure. So I started my career at the Met Office. I graduated with an oceanography master's, and I started working at the Met Office in a really bizarre role where part of my job was going offshore, changing anemometers and wind vanes and temperature gauges on meteorological buoys with a U, that are way off the continental shelf of Ireland. And so part of my job was going offshore, changing all the weather sensors on these buoys. I was spending probably 50 days a year out at sea on these big mooring vessels. And then the other part of my job was when I was back on land, literally, was analysing the data from those buoys. And that's where I got into kind of coding and data analytics and all of those good things. So I started in that job, which felt, you know, that was my first ever proper job, which I thought was normal at the time. And it's only when I look back, I go, goodness, that was a really bizarre job. When we were back in the lab on land, we were working on a site that had an engineering site in this beautiful location in Berkshire that had deer running around the park. It was, you know, big buoys before they'd been deployed at sea, sat around. I mean, it was a completely bizarre environment, but I thought that was normal at the time. So I worked in that role, and that's what got me into kind of data, really. Then I moved to, I went traveling for a couple of years, did the kind of ubiquitous Australia, New Zealand kind of trip and traveling around Asia, and then came back and worked at the Met Office in the commercial part, selling weather forecasts to big retailers like Sainsbury's and Tesco and AXA and all those good guys, because there was a really close correlation between data, between the weather and supermarket sales. And this was back in the early 2000s, so way before predictive analytics was cool, way before people were talking about big data and AI and all those kind of things. We were using long-range weather forecasts, say 15, 16 days ahead, to predict what would get sold in a supermarket. So ahead of its time, really, and quite tricky to sell when sometimes, let's face it, the weather forecast isn't brilliantly accurate for this afternoon or today. So trying to sell those kind of 16-day weather forecasts in terms of how that might influence sales of burgers and baked beans was actually quite tricky. So that's where I got into kind of monetizing data, if you like. Again, it wasn't called that at the time. So that was really where my kind of basis in data started. But then I moved to Bristol. It was either financial services or telecom. So I ended up in financial services. I worked at AXA and Computershare. I was then in marketing roles, often focused on being quite salesy and quite product-led and still quite data-driven, but worked my way up through those organisations and kept coming up with ideas of ways that we could monetize data in those big corporations, and ultimately coming up with new revenue streams for these big businesses and how they could make more money from data they've collected over the last 30, 40 years. And it just kind of got me thinking around my motivation and why am I helping these big corporates make even more money than they already make, right? That wasn't massively motivating for me as a person. My background is SME. My dad's a small businessman. So I thought, well, why don't I see if I can help other businesses and help other SMEs? And that's when I set up TekCurious 3.5 years ago, was that kind of mission around how can I bring those big business tools that are used by all the corporates and enterprises, how can I help the small businesses use those to make and save more money? And I get a big kick out of that around helping small businesses to get smarter and more efficient and more innovative, and all of those great things is a big motivator for me. So that's how it all began, and that's where the kind of idea came from.
Well, that makes sense. And I suppose one of the things, Helen, that it's a fascinating story. I've got visions of you bobbing around in the sea now, kind of with these huge buoys. That is amazing.
That was me, absolutely.
That's really cool. But I suppose kind of fast forwarding then to where you were sort of in your last role before you left to set up TekCurious. I guess I'm sure it's probably something, as you said, your dad's had his own business, and I guess you've grown up in sort of some of that environment in some way, so you can see the positives and the negatives of it. But I think for anybody, and clearly, I mean, people can look at your career on LinkedIn. I mean, you're doing very well for yourself in sort of a big, well-known business, if you like, an enterprise business, where I'm sure the remuneration, the job satisfaction, and the security wasn't anything that ever you sort of were too concerned about. And I guess what was the straw that broke the camel's back that made you finally go, right, I am going to walk away from security, comfort, and dive into kind of almost the unknown? Because when we all set up a business, we've all got hope that it's going to work out, but there are no guarantees. So I guess what was the mentality, the thought process, and what was the final thing that you kind of said, yeah, here's my resignation and I'm off to go and do it?
Madness, probably. It's, as you say, it's massively different. I think I was speaking to someone this morning when one of my colleagues was kind of saying to me that, you know, he had this theory that all kind of entrepreneurs are sociopaths. And I was saying to him, I absolutely think you're right. You have to be a certain level of crazy, you know, because. And certainly that's how I've changed. So when you run your own business, as you say, you never quite know where the money's coming from. There's feast and famine. It's a proper roller coaster, to mix up all my analogies in one. And you either love that or you hate it. And I think a lot of people will give it a go and go, goodness, this is hard. I'd rather go back to those security and comfort areas, which I respect. If that's right for you, then do that. But those of us who continue, you know, we are a little bit broken, and you do get used to the risk taking, and you know, feel a little bit like gambling all the time in terms of, you know, you never quite know what's going to work and what isn't. And I think you either love that or you don't. And again, one of my kind of former colleagues, I think I said, you know, one of my main motivators for setting up the business was to never work for anyone else again. And he kind of said to me, well, quite frankly, Hels, you're now unemployable, you know, as someone who's run her own business. And I was like, do you know what? I think I probably always was. So I look back on my corporate career, and I was always challenging. I was always rebelling against things. And, you know, I think I was always frustrated. Mm-hmm. So whilst I only set up my own business when I was 40, so quite late stage kind of to kind of set up your own business, I think it was inevitable. I think it was always something I was going to do, because that's my personality. I love the uncertainty. I love the risk. I love the roller coaster. I love the gambling. I love the never quite knowing how the week or the day is going to turn out, yet alone the year and the 5 years. And I am a bit of a sociopath, I guess, in that way. But certainly I can understand how a lot of people would go, goodness me, I'd rather, you know, I want to know that I'm getting my X pounds per month, thank you very much, and never having to think about work once I leave the office. I was going to say I understand that sentiment. I guess the point is I don't understand that sentiment, and therefore I'm a little bit broken. So yeah, it's a funny journey running your own.
I think that might be the title of our podcast with you, Helen TekCurious. I'm a little bit broken.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Do it. Yeah, let's do it. That'll get people in.
If you were so starting out and starting the business at the age of 40, which is a young age in my world.
Let's go with that.
Yeah. Did you ever think about it earlier than that at any points in your career, or did it, like Carl alludes to, was it like the straw? We appreciate it's the straw that breaks the camel's back, but obviously, were there any times like at 35 or 30 that you thought, I'm going to do it? No, I'm not. Or was it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And funnily enough, my dad, as I say, runs or kind of partners two SMEs in the engineering sector. And he you know, he very much said to me, you know, having kind of run his own business and gone through the roller coaster, he was like, get a job in a big corporate and get all the training and get the pension.
He was turning you off it. He was turning you
absolutely off it. Yeah. Think of the pension. You'll get a great pension. You'll get great training. Go for it. Go for these big organisations. And I did. But I did think about leaving it. But I never came up with something that was the right idea or the right something that I thought was going to be special or going to be motivating and going to be challenging enough. You know, at one point I thought I might set up a marketing agency, but that just didn't motivate me enough to do it. So, and I think I kept putting it off because I kept thinking, oh, have I got enough experience yet? Right? You know, I was at the Met Office for 8 years, AXA for 8 years, and then Computershare for 4 years. So I was only with the 3 employers, and that didn't feel very much. I think I kept making excuses, really. You know, in hindsight, I should have done it sooner. But then on the other hand, I got so much out of those jobs. I learned so much, and I was incredibly well trained and had phenomenal experiences that probably if I'd done this sooner, I don't think I would have been mentally strong enough to do it, because it is a mental challenge. So I've just contradicted myself all over the place there, but yeah, I did consider it.
So some of that sort of imposter syndrome from the early days, like I don't think I've got the experience. I don't back myself. Is that fair to say at the time?
I think so. Like when I left AXA, I thought about it, but I thought, I've only really got AXA experience and the Met Office experience. So I think it was a little bit of a, you know, how credible am I going to be going in to help other people when I've only got experience with 2 businesses? It was that kind of side of things. So, you know, then I was like, well, let's get another one under my belt, and then I've got 3 organisations that. So I think it was a lot of that, of how, you know, probably just feeling credible and feeling like I could go in and help businesses and not kind of find I was, you know, inexperienced in some ways. So yeah.
And I think to be where you are as a business, I mean, you're growing. You're 3.5 years old. You've done really well through this kind of pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, we've been through and are still going through. because I mean, you hear a lot of businesses, if they're going to fail, are going to fail in their first 12 months, and sort of businesses that come out the back of that are clearly doing very well. But I guess you're able maybe just to talk us through a bit about the kind of the milestones in your journey to sort of get to where you get to. And it'd be great to hear about the really positive ones, but it'd be really good to hear about probably some of the ones that you kind of went, oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it has been brutal. It's been, you know, I was a grafter. I've always been a grafter. I've always worked hard. But oh my goodness, running this business in the last 3.5 years has been the hardest I've ever worked in my career. So it's been really, 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 really hard. And almost when people say to me, should I set up my own business? I'm like, no, don't do it. It's freaking hard. And COVID this year's been really hard for us. So we lost 100K's worth of annual revenue from 2 businesses that just couldn't. Had to furlough everyone during COVID because they were massively impacted. We've had probably 100 grand's worth of business deferred from 2020 to 21. So it's been a really hard year for us. We'll still double our revenue from last year, but we wanted to triple our revenue this year. You know, we had kind of, you know, we are in that growth phase. So it has been, you know, I mean, it's been hard for us, but far less than if you were in the restaurant or retail or events or travel kind of businesses, of course. But it has hit us hard. So yeah, it's kind of, and during the journey, I think it's just, it's really hard running your own business. You're always at that point of, okay, we're doing well now. Let's try and grow. Let's recruit. And then as you recruit, you need more money coming in to cover the additional cost, of course. And that can be really hard, and it can be, as I say, feast and famine and ups and downs all the way through the way. So it's been a real challenge, and you know, and a real kind of test of my resilience and my mental health. You know, it's been you know, I've never really thought about mental health before I ran this business, whereas now I'm really consciously thinking, how can I make sure that I'm resting? How can I make sure that I'm high performing? How can I make sure that I manage stress and anxiety in a positive way? And kind of looking for those devices. And you touched upon it right at the start. The Bristol startup and tech scene is phenomenal, and there's so much support out there that without which I you know, I think I'd be sat here feeling more frazzled and aged at this stage if I hadn't have had that support from organisations like Set Squared and NatWest Accelerator and the ICE group and a number of different fantastic people along the way who have helped me, including other business owners and entrepreneurs, because I think the more I speak to people who run their own business, the more you find how brutally honest everyone is about how shit it can be and how hard it can be, and how we've all had near misses of business failure, and we will have those near misses of business failure again, and all of those things. So being able to have people around you to reassure you that what you're going through is normal and that you will get through it has been a massive positive impact on me, whilst it's been a really, really, really tough 3.5 years.
Yeah, we talk, as mentioned with this Founders series, is when we do talk to founders of businesses, we tend to find that everyone knows everyone. So we'll mention your name as, oh no, Helen, met her, yeah. So do you think, so that's a really good support network, isn't it, in the Southwest for you? Do you find that everyone is very collaborative, even when it comes down to things like, you know, how do you deal with stress and how do you deal with mental health? Do you all take good advice from one another?
Absolutely, yeah. It's really positive, and as I say, I think in some environments you get all the noise around positive stories, you know, successful fundraising, successful revenue growth, and all of those things. And whilst they can be motivating and inspiring, it can also make you feel like, you know, you're the only one that's struggling through COVID, for instance, or struggling with getting sales in, or whatever it might be, struggling with recruitment. And therefore what I benefit more from in those communities is other business owners saying, we're struggling at the moment, or, you know, or we have been struggling, we're just coming out of it now, or, you know, we're having a really hard year, because and there's so much genuine warmth and support and humility and kind of love that comes from the people around you. So whenever I've asked for help, it's been massively helpful. So there's a really tight community, and of course it's brilliant to be able to help other people from my side too, you know, when I can. And so yeah, absolutely, it's I think that startup community has been you know, absolutely massive impact in my kind of journey over the last 3.5 years.
Perfect. And then you mentioned, obviously, sort of looking forward then of sort of where you are. I guess what's on the agenda or the runway for you and the organisation probably over the next 12, 24, 36 months? I guess what's that long term, where are you wanting to get to?
Yeah, so we're an agency at the moment. In that we do bespoke projects for businesses and help them get all their data into one place and create automated reporting and do data analytics and all those good things. And that's great, and we're going to continue that. But we've also come up with a new product idea that will enable us to scale. So our product is designed to help businesses that we all, pretty much every business has all the same platforms that you use, such as Google Analytics and for web, and an email system like MailChimp, and a CRM system like HubSpot, and a financial system like Xero, and, you know, a project management tool like Asana, and the rest, you know, and you end up with islands of data across all of these third-party platforms very quickly. Even small businesses like mine, you know, that even when you've got kind of 5 to 10 people, you're still kind of you've got all these islands of data across all these third-party platforms. So our product brings all of those platforms together into one place in a plug and play, connect your data sources together. It enables businesses to benchmark their performance versus other businesses, so they can tell whether they're doing well or not well when it comes to website performance and email response rates and financials and those types of things. And it enables businesses to use natural language to search rather than relying on code or complex graphs. So our product is designed for SMEs, and we have it at beta stage at the moment. So we're just starting a fundraising round. So far we've reinvested agency profits to get to where we are. We can continue to do that, but it will be a slow kind of product development. Whereas we're looking for, we're fundraising right now in terms of getting seed money to fast track our launch in the UK and then ultimately globally. So this is a completely new phase for me. So far, I've bootstrapped the business. It's 100% owned by me. We haven't had no funding. So this is our first fundraising round, 3.5 years in. We haven't had a product before, so we've got our beta product up and running. It's a SaaS product that's very different than, you know, we've had before in the business. Therefore, there's everything that comes with that, from a kind of strategy and management and team and marketing and all those different kind of challenges coming into play now. So we will have a product business and an agency business. They will both be targeting the same types of businesses, so SMEs. They'll both be helping them connect all their data together. But they have different distribution channels, different technology solutions, different kind of support challenges. So that's going to be the next big challenge, running both of those and making sure that we do both of them really well. So yeah, big challenges coming up.
So on that basis then, and you've touched on the subject, you clearly are a HR expert, a marketing expert, CIO, CFO. How many hats do you have to wear, and which one's the better hat than the other?
Oh, that's a tough question.
I guess because we asked the same question with a founder in our last podcast, and I guess it's that thing, isn't it, where do you get to a point where it's like, I'm not really a marketing expert, I need to get that kind of skills and experience in the business? Or how do you balance all the heads, or the hats rather?
It's really tricky. I'm not sure I do it very well. I think sometimes people, I have been given that advice where that you should have your shareholder hat on, and then your kind of manager hat, and and you should literally think of it as being hats that you wear, and therefore you think differently. I've never really done that. It's more of a kind of amalgamation of lots of different thought processes. I think the fact that I've worked in the corporate world for 20 years has taught me a lot. So therefore, I've managed teams of 60, 70 people. I've gone through, everything that you've had to do with people, from recruitment to performance managing people out to redundancies. And therefore that toughens you up when you've done that before. You learn from all the mistakes you've made and do it better when it comes to people is the theory, but constantly learning. There's areas that I feel more confident in. So with marketing, I'm more comfortable with that than with, whilst I started my career as a coder, I'm not now, right? So I've got a CTO who leads on the tech side rather than me. But it's really hard. There's I kind of like Gary V or Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you've seen him on LinkedIn. He's quite a good influencer, and he talks about business leaders needing to be in the cloud and in the dirt, in terms of partly thinking strategically and long term, and partly thinking today and in the detail. And I think that analogy really resonates with me. I'm constantly diving between the minutiae of what we're doing for a client on a dashboard that we're producing for them, and thinking 5 years ahead and what our business structure is going to look like in 5 years ahead. I don't think I have it nailed. For me, I haven't compartmentalized it. I've tried in the past kind of going, okay, Fridays are going to be my big strategy kind of cloud day.
Strategy Friday.
It never works, it never works. So it's more of a, I suppose, getting used to multitasking, recognizing, as you say, my strengths, my weaknesses, and when you're a small business, also taking calculated risks of going, do you know what, I might not be a legal expert or a finance expert. But, at the moment, what's the level of risk around those before we get in a CFO and a legal kind of head of legal? So, and making those calculated decisions on when it's okay to DIY and when it's not okay and you need external help, and trying to make those good judgment calls on things like that.
Makes sense. And I think, just listening to you talk, just before you answer that last question, sort of, I think the product sounds great, because I'm faced all the time with these challenges. I've got sets of data sat everywhere, and I kind of go, it'd be brilliant to have something that pulled it all together. So I think that sounds great. And I think then, so I guess that journey you're going on of sort of moving into a SaaS type business and that recurring revenue, I guess that's the journey and the type of business you speak to lots of people that they want to go on, because if you can get that recurring revenue or sticky revenue, whatever you want to call it, that's brilliant. But I guess one of the questions I was keen to get your view on was, obviously you mentioned everything so far has all been bootstrapped, and you still could fund it going that way as bootstrapping it. But I guess then you're sort of going, okay, well, I want to go out, I want to raise, but I guess if you do that, you end up having to give away some of the business and some of the ownership, and then almost, from what I hear and what you kind of read, you kind of go, actually, it starts to become a bit of a different dynamic then, because then you do have shareholders, and it's not just you having to put your shareholder hat on. You genuinely have shareholders there, tapping on the door, going, "What are you doing, Helen? Well, why are you doing this?" And I guess how have you found that? How are you finding going through sort of raises and dealing with different types of investors or PE or whatever way you're doing it? I mean, how are you kind of finding your way through that?
Yeah. So on the first side, when I set up the business, my plan was to not get investment. So my plan was to, keep it relatively small and grow it organically and have complete control over it. I think there are loads of benefits with that. As you say, you've got control. It's simple. You don't have to ask permission for things. We're very agile, and all of those different things. I think though, where it came to was when I'm looking at the product and looking at the scalability of the product, if we don't get investment, it will be slow to market, and therefore there's a risk that it's not required anymore, or other competitors have got in there first, and all those types of things would be a challenge, or indeed that we don't go as big as we could, so we end up with a smaller market share, kind of smaller share of wallet. So that's where I've kind of come to with it, was that if we want this product to fulfill the potential, which I do, and want it to be a global product that's used by SMEs all over the world, then we need help to fast track that, and that is in two ways. One, money, because by reinvesting profits, the problem is the agency always comes first, and of course you need profits to reinvest. So that kind of it's always a challenge on time, and the product development will always be slower because of that kind of dynamic. Versus getting investment means we can dedicate resources onto it immediately, and get things up and running. The other side is recognizing what my experience and what I have and what I don't have. So I've got big corporate experience, I've got public sector experience, I've now got startup experience, but I've never scaled. I don't have scale up experience, right? Actually turning a startup into a global business is not something I've done before. So getting advisors and people around me who can help with that will be absolutely pivotal. So it's balancing both of those things, of the money so we can fast track, and getting advice in from people who have done this before and can help us to do it in a smart, efficient way, rather than me and my team learning lessons for ourselves through that.
That makes absolute sense. And how are you finding going through sort of the raising, and then sort of going through that, dealing with different investors, building the pitch deck? Because that's always an interesting one to kind of get your first one off the ground. Yeah,
it's the pitch deck one is absolutely there. I'm probably on my 50th version, so it's just ridiculous. And of course, getting lots of contradictory feedback on it as well. So I think it's a great discipline to have. Like, how do you? Because often you have to pitch quite quickly, whether it's 60 seconds or 10 minutes or 5 minutes. So it's a really good challenge to be able to convey what you're talking about in a simple, compelling way. It's a good learning experience. So that's a good process going through there. And Set Squared have been brilliant in terms of providing feedback and coaching around that. So that's been great. In terms of the investor experience, I'm still quite early days in that. So I've kind of done a pitch to an angel network. I've spoken to a few angels. So still a little bit early on that. But finding it certainly a new experience for me in terms of what they're focused on, and effectively being the return. And getting some surprising questions sometimes, so which kind of just for me seemingly from left field, but obviously makes sense in their head. So that's a fun experience, and I suppose getting the chance to talk about my business openly with people, which I don't often do. Don't often share financial results with people, or share financial forecasts, or share the vision and all of those things. Don't often get a chance to do that. So it's a great opportunity to do that. So yeah, early days. I think there is a lot of talk out there that comes up all the time about how female founders aren't very well funded, and the stats aren't good in terms of percentage chances. I can't remember what the numbers were last year. Was it something like 4% of investments were into female founded businesses? So the odds are against me. If you look at it from a data driven perspective, the odds of raising funds are against me. So that's in my mind, but it makes me more determined to be successful. So yeah, enjoying it at the moment rather than finding it a chore. But ask me in 6 months, I'm sure I'll have a more weary view of the fundraising process.
And as you aren't busy enough, you're publishing books, right?
yeah. Why not? Why not?
Throw it in there.
Absolutely. Well, there was a lockdown, so yeah. when I first set up the business, I spoke to one of my old managers right at the start, and he was saying, okay, it's all very well, Helen, you're going to set up a data agency, but you're going to be up against people who have written books about the subject. So so I literally wrote on my list 3 years ago, write a book, right? And write a book has been on my to-do list for three years now.
Wow.
So when it came to lockdown, I was like, right, come on, let's just get on with it. So I spent pretty much every weekend from March till July, August, in my garden when I could, writing and finishing the book. And some of the content, a lot of the content had been information I've been sharing at workshops and in blogs and, in client meetings anyway. So, it wasn't like I was writing from scratch. It was really combining, the approach that I take together into a book. So that was a great experience, albeit if it wasn't for lockdown, I don't think I would have got there. But yeah, now available on Amazon, everybody.
Yeah, there's the book plug. There's the book plug.
There you go. The data escalator. Little rhyming thing in there too.
Brilliant.
And then I suppose, just Helen, one of the things, you touched upon it lightly, sort of being a female founder, and I think that's one of the things that is always a challenge, if you'd like, is to get more females into the technology sector, because I think the more of a diverse team that you can build, the better it becomes, the better the perspective, and the more rounded the business becomes. But I guess, I'd be interested to get your take on sort of the career you've had as a female, sort of working in the technology sector, then to being sort of a female founder, and what your views are on that topic, I suppose, and I guess any advice that you'd give to sort of budding people that sort of want to enter this sector, whether that be male or female. What advice you'd have around that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I've had a kind of funny career when it comes to diversity. When I first joined the Met Office in the role when I was jumping around on weather buoys in the Atlantic Ocean, I was the only female then in an engineering team. But so whilst diversity wasn't good, the inclusion levels were brilliant, right? The guys around me were brilliantly supportive. They wanted to improve diversity in their team. So I think there is a big difference between diversity and inclusion. And similarly, when I've worked in big corporates, some of the big corporates have been brilliant with diversity and, very proactive across all levels of diversity, whereas some businesses, it has been more of a boys' club and felt quite different. So I think it can vary a lot. In the tech scene, when I first started the business, I was doing quite a lot in the blockchain space, and that was incredibly male dominated. So I was at all different events and conferences, and often would be there might be one other woman in the room, and we kind of say hello to each other and kind of comment about how well, at least there's two of us. So it is a problem, and yet in terms of it would be great to see more women, but the environments in the tech environment that I've seen in the last 3.5 years have been incredibly inclusive, and whilst I might be the only female in the room or on a Zoom call or whatever it might be, I find pretty much all the tech founders that I work with are all equally feminists, and very supportive. So it doesn't feel like a lonely environment, or it doesn't feel discriminatory in that way when I'm talking with other kind of tech founders and tech entrepreneurs in that way. So it's a funny dynamic. I think it would be great to get more women into tech and other kind of minorities. So I do support projects like Girls Talk Data, which is an initiative designed to get women into data. Babasa does a lot with young people, and particularly the kind of BAME population. I support them with workshops and things like that, with mentoring. So it's something I'm passionate about, but I don't. There's often with these things not easy answers to sort them. It does start with education and raising the idea of these opportunities when people are younger. Helping people move from different careers into tech is another kind of one, which that's what the Girls Talk Data Initiative is all about. So yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about, and so my advice to women, if they are thinking, oh goodness, it's quite male dominated, is, as I say, it's I find the environments to be really inclusive, really supportive. The guys are all fantastically inclusive and supportive. So don't be threatened by it, because whilst it might look a bit intimidating, it's really not when you get in there. And equally, where there are women, the women in the tech environment are brilliantly supportive of each other. There's a really nice culture of women supporting women. So yeah, I think I think the Bristol tech scene's pretty good, in terms of inclusivity. We just need more people from different kind of areas to get involved. So hopefully they will, and we'll start to see some of those changes.
And I agree, Helen, and I think part of me kind of hopes that might be one of the positive things that comes out the back of what we've all been through this year is career changes. Because I mean, you're seeing the stats coming out already that set aside sort of healthcare, technology is the fastest growing sector in terms of sort of job growth, ain't there? And I think the more companies and sort of not-for-profit organisations can offer people the chance to career change, to reskill. I think that there could be something really exciting that comes out in the back of that. But I think all of us, sort of everybody involved in the industry, needs just to be really thoughtful around that. Because I think, like I said, there could be some brilliant things that could happen. But like I said,
so I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to ask this almost the final question.
Sure.
Looking back on your career so far in startup mode, what advice would you give? What advice would you give to those people that are crazy as you are?
Broken, crazy. Yeah.
Who want to set out on this journey? What advice would you give?
To just do it. I think if you've got that burning desire, as you say, and you are a bit broken and a bit crazy, then just do it. And that's what I think. With me, I'm like, I as I say, there's part of me that thinks I should have done it sooner, albeit you learn a lot from every experience. But yeah, just do it. Get on with it. I think there's a mindset change around. I think we're all afraid of failure, aren't we? And particularly what might be perceived as public failure that comes with running a business. Where if you did a job for a year or 6 months or 6 weeks, whereas when you're running your own business, if you exit a business, that we do call that a business failure, which I think is the wrong kind of language around it. Because you get so much out of that experience that you need to reframe that in your head. So I've made tons of mistakes since I set up the business, 3.5 years ago. Tons of mistakes. Recruited the wrong people, haven't recruited the right people. Made slow decisions, too quick decisions. Invested in the wrong things, haven't invested in the right things. I mean, when I look back, I go, goodness me, like all the things I could reel off and go, mistake. But of course, I've learned so much from all of those experiences that they make you stronger. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but all those mistakes you make you stronger and make you more resilient, and you do get to a point that whilst it's a massive roller coaster, and I would say to people to prepare themselves for that, that you get so much more resilient, you get so much more confident, you have so much more belief that no matter what happens, you'll sort it out. So yeah, I think that's what I'd say. Just do it. Surround yourself with people who are at the same stage as you, people who have got more experience than you, people who are 10 years down the line, 3 years down the line. I've got loads out of people helping me, if only to have a cup of coffee and share their own experiences and ups and downs with me. I've got so much out of that that's massively reassuring. So yeah, that's what I'd say. Just do it. Try and get over that fear of failure and get into the mindset of no matter what happens, you'll work your way through it, and ask for help.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Helen, it's been a real pleasure having you on our podcast, and I really appreciate your time, and I think it will be very informative for people. I think this is what we want to get out of this, because I think if we were to have someone on to say, oh, it's been an absolute dream, everything's perfect, then you're lying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, it's been a pleasure from my side too. So thanks guys.
No worries at all.
Thank you.